Hello and welcome back to Blue Collar Bets with the Source Podcast. I am your host today, Sam Hiller, aka Schiller from the Source Podcast. My co-host today, Job Goddard, unfortunately cannot be joining us, but he sends along his best regards as we dive through this March Madness. We have not too many plays to go through today, although I do want to dive into a couple of the weekend mashups because I understand that there are more games besides the ones tonight, and there are definitely more games to go through. We'll definitely be going through every single interesting matchup in college basketball and in the NBA tonight. So, if there are any questions or any games you want me to go over, please drop them in the comments. And without further ado, I'm just going to get rolling and start with the March Madness plays. Because I mean, let's face it, that's what a lot of people are here for these days. So we already, unfortunately, did not start out the day too well in college basketball, but we are going to turn it around here. We have two plays. The first one being UAB +9. Um, I don't like a lot about this Houston team. I think that the way that they've played in a lot of their big games this season hasn't really been too spectacular. Their level of competition they've played hasn't been too spectacular. They haven't been great against guards ever since they lost Marcus Sasser. I think Jordan Walker has a big game here. And I think that they just keep it within the 9 points. I know that the money line's enticing at +335. I personally would stay away from it just because they're already, I mean, I don't know. March Madness, anything can happen. I might throw a little sprinkle here or there, but I think most of my units, or my one unit in this case, is going to +9. If I throw anything on the money line, it will be live, and it would be waiting for them to hit +500 or higher, and I'd throw maybe a quarter of a unit on it. I'm really not too keen on chasing there, but I really do like the +9, and I think they keep it close throughout. Jordan Walker is also, in my opinion, a top player on the floor at that point. And I think that he's going to surprise a lot of people, especially with UAB not really getting a lot of shots to be on TV very often. I think that he's one of the mid-major players that's really going to come out and make a showing of himself to try to show the world who he really is. I wonder what his points prop is, and I'm actually going to give it a look to see if I can find it really quickly, but I don't want to hold anybody up. Let's see if I can get one. But on a different note as well, I know a lot of people are higher on this Houston team than I am. I'm not saying they're not a good team. I just think this is a bad matchup for them guard play wise. I think that especially if they had Marcus Sasser, I'd definitely be looking at them in a different light, especially for this tournament. I can't get a prop line up right now. I'm having some Wi-Fi issues loading, so we're just going to move on to the next game. If there are no questions about that one, I'm going to go to Davidson at a pick'em, and that's at either a pick'em or -1. I've seen the line fluctuate up and down a lot over the course of the over the day and kind of over the last 2 days, especially with a lot of people talking about Davidson, some sharp money going their way, and then it moving kind of back towards Michigan State as we're kind of unaware about Tyson Walker's injury status right now. Him being a very important piece of that Michigan State offense. I like Davidson in this game for a number of reasons. Regardless of the fact that they have a former Michigan State player on in their starting lineup. I also think that Lee is a very, very talented scorer, and they're going to have trouble handling him. I think the size advantage actually doesn't go to Michigan State here. I think Davidson has enough size to really compete and work the ball inside out. They have the shooters to keep the scoring going, and they are playing closer to home. I know they're in South Carolina, not North Carolina, but it is technically a closer to home game. I do like Davidson in this matchup at a pick'em. I I I do worry about some of the strength of schedule stats and some of the adjusted defense stats. I wonder if Michigan State, if they score well, if Davidson's going to be able to hold on with the barrage. But I also am kind of counting on Tyson Walker not having his greatest game here. Again, that team flows through him. Gabe Brown, I expect to have a worse game because of it. I don't know. I just think that Davidson has the firepower to get through this first round. Duke in the second round is a different story. Job's already covered that in his BCMG bracket podcast. You can check that out from Into the Lab from the other night. Great show they did over there. And that's it for my plays tonight in March Madness. If we look forward, I wonder if we look forward, if there are any games I would be interested in. I also think a lot of people are big on Colgate. I'm not at all. I think this game being played in Wisconsin and Colgate's strength of schedule is really getting lost in the March Madness idea of, Colgate's going to win because it's March Madness and they're a good shooting team. Not every good shooting team is able to make these upsets. And a lot of it relies on rebounding, second chance opportunities, lack of turnovers, or depth of turnovers. And for all of these reasons combined, I just don't necessarily think that Colgate has it in them. I think the 7.5 points for Wisconsin is something I'm really not too high on. But if you have a parlay that you're looking to throw one last leg in there, I think Wisconsin money line would be a good shout to do it. I actually did forget that I have one more play to go through that I did not make a banner for. So if I can make a banner for it really quickly. Uno segundo. That's not how it works at all. Yeah, so they're about minus 106 right now. I have TCU at minus 106 for 1 unit. I think that they are a deceptively talented team, especially with their guard play. I want to make sure I get this name right, so I'm looking it up. But their point guard, I think his last name is Miles. Mike Miles, yeah. He's been pretty dominant over the course of he was pretty dominant over the end of the season. His Big 12 tournament was strong. He's played very well against very good defenses before. So Seton Hall doesn't necessarily scare me in that asset. Seton Hall does scare me with their size. That's why this is kind of my last play and not something I'd not recommend throwing at anything too risky. But I do think TCU is talented enough on the guard play side to get the win here. I also lean with the team with the more talented best player. In my opinion, that's TCU with Mike Miles here. I don't want to spend too much time on it because this is not one of my favorite picks by any means. It's a system play as well. But I do like TCU to beat Seton Hall here and move on to the next round. And I do think that Seton Hall is slightly fraudulent. I think they get a lot of their wins because of their size and because of their rebounding advantages. And I don't know if that's going to be enough against a team like TCU with the guard play that they have. So I actually want to move on to the NBA because I have my favorite play of the night is in the NBA. I know it's March Madness and everyone hates me for having a play in March in the NBA, but the Grizzlies are still at minus 6.5 on Caesars Sportsbook. I actually got this in at 5.5 before the Ja Morant news broke and the Trae Young news broke because there was questions about whether Ja would play and if Trae would play. Ja Morant has now been ruled in. Trae Young has now been ruled out. The line has dropped about a full point. I expect it to drop a little more before game time, which, correct me, I think it's in 20 minutes to 30 minutes. I'm not necessarily sure. I'm confirming that right now. Yeah, it's in about 20 minutes. The line's already at 7 in a lot of other places, but at Caesars Sportsbook, you can get it. FanDuel Sportsbook is also offering it at 6.5. I have 2 units on this play for a couple of reasons. First of all, Memphis very good against the Eastern Conference, 17-8, 11-3 on 2 to 3 days rest. Memphis is the second best net rating over the last 3 weeks. Atlanta's 14th. Neither team is really high in turnovers. In fact, they're both the second lowest in turnovers over the last 3 weeks. But without Trae Young, I expect Atlanta to be a little more careless with the ball. Also, Memphis is dominant in the paint. They're first in points in the paint per game by 10 points. That's in average, by the way, 65 points in the paint per game, primarily because their point guard also leads the league in individual players in points in the paint per game. Atlanta's 22nd in opponents' points in the paint per game in the last 3 weeks. They're also 26th in opponents' second chance points per game in the last 3 weeks. Memphis is first in that category as well. And this was before Trae Young was ruled out, but in his career versus Memphis, Trae Young shot 43% from the field and 28% from three. So he has trouble, and they have had trouble shooting against Memphis historically. I like Memphis minus the 6 here, even minus the 7. I think this is a double-digit win for them, and I think they keep on rolling, especially with Ja a little, I don't want to say well-rested because he was coming off an injury. It wasn't like a rest game, but Ja Morant definitely has a lot more in the tank than maybe some of the other guys might, and they're already on 2 days rest. So I think that's a dangerous combination, especially with Atlanta not being able to really guard I mean, it's Brandon Goodwin, I think, who's going to be guarding John Morant. So, not Brandon Goodwin. Is it Lou Williams? Let me check to confirm who their starting point guard is without Trae Young. It's DeLon Wright, I think, now that I think about it. But let me just confirm. It is DeLon Wright. So DeLon Wright is going to be guarding John Morant. Let me do a quick little search here to see DeLon Wright's defensive rating, even though I guess not going to be phenomenal. 113. So yeah, I'm big on John Morant tonight. I think also John Morant props are probably a shout, but I also know that the books have jumped all over that already. So not too much on that, maybe a sprinkle, but not a crazy amount by any means. I want to now move on to my next NBA game. I have two more. Nuggets minus 2.5 for 1 unit. I like this play for a number of reasons, but I actually might bump it up to a unit and a half. Um, I'm not going to waste the time writing in there, but since March 11th, I think Jared Allen got hurt about 2 games before that, but since then, Cleveland has allowed the following stats to centers: 30 points and 17 rebounds to Bam Adebayo, 20 points and 14 rebounds to Nikola Vucevic, 24 points and 14 rebounds to Ivica Zubac, and 35 points and 17 rebounds to Joel Embiid. I think this is a great spot for Jokic to go off. I know Evan Mobley's most likely going to be the rookie of the year. A lot of that's for his offensive play, and his defensive play is great in transition. He's good off ball. He's good on the blocks in terms of chasing people down, but against a big body like Nikola Jokic, I see him struggling a lot. I think Jokic props are also a good shout tonight. And I would, if I was thinking really about it, I would probably, if you want to make a player prop parlay, I'd say that Jokic points and John Morant points would probably be the way I'd go, depending on what those numbers are, of course. Also, Cleveland has a net rating of minus 3.8 over the last 3 weeks. They've really been struggling and kind of reverting back to what people thought their struggles might be, but they also do have a lot of injuries they're dealing with. I do want to preface with that. They're still missing Colin Sexton. Rajon Rondo's out as well, I believe. So they're missing the backup point guard and their starting shooting guard. They're also missing Karis LeVert still, I believe. And now I think, yeah. And now Jared Allen's out for the foreseeable future as well. So there are a lot of things going against them that are out of their control. But without Jared Allen, I see them struggling a lot to defend Jokic, working from the inside out. I think Denver wins this game, especially since they've been pretty hot over the last couple weeks as well. And then moving on to my last play of the day. We are going to keep this episode slightly short, in all honesty, because I do want to watch some March Madness as well. But I also am here to answer any questions. And I also just don't have Job to bounce back and forth off of. So I don't have much to have contrasting with me. So it seems like to me that all my picks are great. So I love the Spurs at -2 here. I think this is a good spot for them, even though it does kind of feel like a trap, which is why I only have 1 unit on it. The Pelicans are 3-16 without Brandon Ingram this season. Also, the Spurs have won 5 straight home games against the Pelicans. They're 29-5 all time in home games in this series. Among series involving NBA teams, the only team to have a higher home win percentage against any opponent is when the Spurs host against the Nets, which is 43-6. The only problem I have here, as well as the trap line, is that I think Spurs are 7-19 after a win, and they did just come off a buzzer-beating game against the Thunder that they honestly should not have needed a buzzer beater to win. So I do have my cautions there. My problem here with taking New Orleans is because I've been back in New Orleans a lot recently, is that without Brandon Ingram, like their mid-range game is really flawed and they can't really work their way out from there. I think CJ McCollum has to go get his own shots instead of having a lot of the shots available for him. Also, I believe Devontae Graham is questionable. I don't know whether or not he's been made available or not. I'm going to refresh my lineups page just to make sure I have all the current data before we wrap it up. But 1 second. Yeah, it's still not announced because that game starts in about an hour. Real quick, I do want to go over these props since we obviously have the time. Um, let's look at the. I'm going to look at the Jokic props and the John Morant props. See how far that takes me. Unless the page won't load, in which case I might just have to estimate. Because I would estimate that they're both probably around 26 to 28 points, which I know is high. But if you can get it at a decent number, I'd take it there. I can't seem to load this page right now, and it doesn't seem to be cooperating with me, and neither does my Wi-Fi. But I do want to have a couple thank yous before I leave. First of all, I want to thank my co-host Joe Goddard, who's obviously not here with us tonight, but I have had a couple personal family issues that I've been dealing with recently, and Job has taken a lot of the Source Twitter and podcast hosting, podcast guesting, all of those things over. So, really quick, I do want to shout him out for that. Thank you to Job. Thank you to our editor, Aiden. Thank you to BCMG for helping us always get this platform across. I'm always happy to be joined with the BCMG guys. And thank you to our friends at SharpRank on the SharpRank app. That's where you can find all of our picks and all of our plays before we release them on Twitter or before we release them on stream to get the best closing line value, including that Memphis -5.5, which is now around 7. And yeah, that's going to do it for us here at Blue Collar Bets on Friday. We'll have longer episodes for you next week when I got Job, and maybe we have a couple other special guests with us to talk about that weekend, which will probably consist of even more madness, as this weekend has kind of been lacking some of the shock and awe factor that we expect from our March games. Look for some of that in Davidson and TCU's games tonight, maybe even UAB as well with a shock upset. If you want to sprinkle in that plus 335, I wouldn't blame you. But that's going to do it from me. I'm going to leave with my banner here of my favorite play up so that is what rocks out. But thank you guys for watching. I do appreciate everyone joining. And yeah, let's have a great weekend. Let's watch some phenomenal March basketball. And I'm glad that we're back in sports. I'm glad we got the wave back. I'm glad free agency is opening up in the NFL, and we have a lot of stuff to talk about on the Source Podcast. So check us out at Source Podcast 11 or www.sourcepodcast.com or anywhere that you listen to podcasts. That's going to do it for me, guys. Have a good one. Blue collar stock trading? Nah. I think that's Wall Street bets, but that's I see how that could be confused for one another. But blue collar, this is from Blue Collar Media Group. I don't know. I don't trade stocks. I invest in player performance, as I like to say. So anyway, that's going to do it from the Source Podcast here. See you guys.